Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld Podcast, your weekly source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. And this week, the countdown to Skeleton Crew is on. The premiere of the next live-action Star Wars series is just days away, and we do mean days. We'll be taking a look ahead at the series and just chatting about some all-round fun Star Wars things as we dive into your questions in another, let's say, extended edition of Ask the SWU. Lots to get to, lots of fun to be had here on this not a holiday weekend for me. Damn it, I know it is for a lot of you listening, but for me it isn't. I had to work today and tomorrow, and I'm grumpy about it, but I'm happy to be here. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? Good to be here. And for the record, I did say last week that I wasn't going to be here. And let the record show I wasn't here. I'm not here, okay? This isn't official. You're actually not seeing me. I am just an illusion, okay? So pay me no mind.
Yeah, okay, you're not here. You're a Force Ghost, Ben. Ben, as you were just speaking, I just noticed something.
Yeah.
Can you see what's wrong with my setup right now? Because something is wrong. Something is wrong. And it's right in the middle.
Oh, boy. I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it.
I just noticed.
I see it.
The mic flag on my microphone is upside down. So we're the UMS today instead of the SWU.
I think it's just an omen for this episode, honestly.
If you listen or watch my other podcast, Game Over, I had to do the episode last night from a different location because the tractor beam was on this channel. And so I did the show, recapping and breaking down the last night's Toronto Maple Leafs game from actually where I used to do this show from my parents' basement. And I brought the mic flag with me, which upon review doesn't really make sense because it's not a Star Wars Underworld show, and a Star Wars Underworld show was happening in this studio, and I just took the flag with me for some reason. And I think it's just habit. I just packed it up because I always pack it up whenever we're doing like Comic-Con or anything like that. Anytime I take the microphone somewhere, I bring the flag with me. And so I was sort of putting everything together right before the show, and I thought, oh yeah, I got everything perfect. I got the computer's back, the mic's back, the arms back, Hans dice are here, and the flag's on. Everything's good. And lo and behold, it is upside down. So it's the show tonight. Welcome to the podcast. We're just gonna say a lot. We're gonna say a lot, which we do to begin with. It's just you and me, Ben. It's just you and me, at least for now. Our co-hosts are celebrating or not. I don't actually think anybody's actually celebrating Thanksgiving right now. I think you are. I think you're the only one who is.
Maybe against my will.
But we will we'll power through and we'll have a good time talking some Star Wars. Before we get too deep into the discussion, of course, we want to remind you to make sure you're subscribed to the Star Wars Underworld podcast on YouTube, and the Star Wars Underworld Network on YouTube, and the Star Wars Underworld on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you're listening on a platform, that's the word I was looking for, on a platform that lets you leave a review, by all means, please do so. That really helps us out. And join the Discord to keep the discussion going between shows. Lots of good stuff. I even made a cameo appearance in Discord today. I shocked everybody by popping in
When
there.
I saw that notification pop up, God gave me a heart attack. Okay, that's not Dominic Jones on Discord. Not a thing that happens ever. It was a Thanksgiving. It was a Life Day miracle.
Life Day miracle, exactly. And of course, make sure you're checking out the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, including the Raeside, Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, the Tractor Beam, which had created the recording conflict with Game Over Toronto that led to the upside down mic flag. It's my fault, not Matt and Chris's fault, but
Matthew.
But do check out that show to see what led to this. Yeah, that's what we usually do for this. Let's dive into things. Of course, Skeleton Crew is just days away, and in fact, it's coming out a little bit sooner than anticipated. Because it's been moved up by a day. It's not premiering December 3rd anymore, which is what we were told for months and months. December 3rd is going to come out then. Now, December 2nd, a whole 24 hours earlier at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It will premiere on Monday. Subsequent episodes will continue to air on Tuesdays. So you will have to wait 8 days between episodes 2 and 3, because we get the two-part premiere on December 2nd. Ben, this was perhaps the least surprising news they could have dropped about Skeleton Crew. I swear they do this for every show. It was a big deal when they did it with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
But ever since then, it's like every show, they're like, for like weeks and months, like, guess what? It's coming out on May 25th. And then 2 weeks or a couple days before, they're like, guess what? It's May 24th now. Isn't that exciting? And they got a whole other round of publicity, like to the point where I think that's the plan. I think that's the goal, is to create additional publicity by changing, quote unquote, the first day that the show comes out, after telling us for months and months and months. And it's kind of a no harm situation, because, if you were planning on watching it on the 3rd, it's not like you can't. It will be there. Yeah. It's available. That's the joy of these streaming platforms. But yeah, least surprising news I've heard in some time about Star Wars.
Yeah, it's funny that, because like it was kind of a big deal with Obi-Wan. It was like, oh yeah, celebration, it was this whole thing, and they're doing the premiere and the whole cast is there, and they just dropped it on on Disney Plus even earlier than they said they would. So they kind of changed the release schedule twice there. They're making a good old fashioned a thing out of this, and I'm very curious. Now it's just going to be like, we're going to expect it from now on. We're going to be like, Andor, come on, 24 hours early, come on, let's go, Andor season 2. That's what it's going to become, because that's where we are now. You would think, I don't know, I get it, but also I don't get it, because it's like they have billboards and all this stuff, all this promotional material, which says the day after, which I guess, as you're saying, it's still valid, but at the same time, it's funny that they're just like, and so late in the game they changed it. So I don't know. It's really. Do you have enough time to properly fix it?
Yes, it is. It is fixed, and I hope I still sound okay, because I did.
You do.
Okay,
You're good.
Yeah. While Ben was talking, I realized, hey, I have a minute here. I can make.
I didn't know how hard it would be to actually change that. So.
No, it's pretty easy, as everybody who's watching just saw.
I haven't seen this.
Yeah, like the Obi-Wan one felt special. It felt like it was like a thing that was like they had done, like you're saying, specifically for Celebration, and now it's just like, all right, this is just what they do. They moved up Ahsoka. I think they did it with Acolyte. I can't remember. They've certainly done it with this.
Seems like I remember something like that.
Yeah. Maybe one of the Bad Batch seasons as well. They just bump it up by a day. Why not? And look, why are we complaining? there's no reason to complain. We get it a day earlier. That's fun. And then, you wait an extra day. You're waiting 8 days instead of 7. Oh, well, it's not that. It's not that difficult.
The only casualty in this was that anyone that follows our social media knows that for years and years and years, I have been doing a countdown for all the shows. Every big thing, I try to do a countdown for it. It's this little graphic that I make up. It's not much work, but I do it, and closer to the time it gets a lot of engagement. People, I think, expect it, so I'm very excited to do it. And once we get closer to the thing, I'm doing one every single day. And today, the day they announced this was the one day that I decided I'm going to get my work done early. I'm going to schedule all my stuff ahead of time, and I'm going to sleep in. And next thing I know, I'll wake up that day like, it's actually the day after you, bro, you idiot. I'm just like, give me a break. Come on.
Give Ben a break, everybody. Guy needs a chance to,
I'm telling you,
catch up with all of the Star Wars news. Speaking of helpful graphics, the official Star Wars social media accounts put out a nice, useful one with all the release dates for the episodes. They've got, obviously December 2nd for episodes 1 and 2, December 10th for episode 3, December 17th for episode 4, December 24th, that's Christmas Eve for episode 5, December 31st, that's New Year's Eve for episode 6. Ringing in the new year with Star Wars. I like that. January 7th is episode 7, and January 14th is episode 8. I guess they couldn't put one out on January 6th.
Honestly,
that would have been a riot.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just dumb, but genuinely, it wasn't until I saw this graphic that I realized, oh crap, we're gonna be talking about this show in January. I didn't realize that.
I'm more just like looking at it going, oh right, we can't take a Christmas break this year.
Yeah,
we're continuing.
That's what I was thinking.
We're continuing to do Star Wars podcasts. Yeah, all the way through. They also revealed the directors for the episodes. We knew these already, but John Watts, David Lowery, the Daniels, Jake Schreier, Bryce Dallas Howard, Lee Isaac Chung, and John Watts again directing these. But
it's actually a different guy named John Watts. They
got
a different guy.
Yeah, just with the same exact name. Well, speaking of John Watts, he and Chris Ford and a lot of the cast and crew have been out, doing interviews and promoting the show as they do. And in an interview with Den of Geek, they kind of set some expectations for what people should look for going into this series. And they warned against major cameos being something that happens in the show. Watts says, I don't want people to think that there's going to be some insane cameo in the middle of the show. Ford adds, not to rule anything out, but Jude Law isn't really Palpatine or anything like that. Fair enough. We've been through that before. We've been through a surprise Palpatine, and I don't want to go through that again.
Oh, so you're saying the episode 7 of Skeleton Crew is not going to be named The Return of the Mandalorian or something? Disappointed.
Yeah, I think this is good for the show. The Mando verse shows for a while there, we're getting a little bit reliant on, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. In terms of characters showing up, and the big moments were not necessarily new things happening to the characters, but familiar characters coming back. Season 1 of Mando, there's is there a single familiar character in that? I don't think there is. I think it's all new.
Yeah.
So the most familiar thing was the episode where Dave Filoni and Matt Lanter have cameos, and they're not even, Matt Lanter's not playing Anakin. Filoni's not a director he doesn't play a director. He plays an X-Wing pilot. There isn't, in season 1, there isn't that revolving door of familiar faces. Then you get into season 2, and this isn't a criticism of season 2, because I do think season 2 is the best season of The Mandalorian. But episode 1, you have Cobb Vanth. Episode 3, you have Bo-Katan. Episode 5, you have Ahsoka. Episode 6, you have Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And then episode 8, you have Luke Skywalker. Now, they all worked. They did a really good job of telling a story that was centered around Din Djarin and Grogu and bringing in those characters in ways that made sense for the story of Din Djarin and Grogu. Then you get into the Book of Boba Fett. And then you start getting into, Mando shows up and takes over an entire episode. And then the following week, yes, you get Boba Fett back, but also in that episode is Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano and R2-D2. And you're getting flashbacks to Order 66. And like, it's just like, it's overload with familiarness. Again, not that those episodes are bad, but it was starting to become where the story of Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett was very much sidelined from, his own show for an episode and a half, if not 2 episodes. And to the point where when we were talking about that show, we were spending as much time on who else could cameo in this show as opposed to, what is going on? What is Boba Fett's arc? We were spending a lot of time on, is Han going to show up? Hera going to show up? Is Chewie going to show up? Like, we were spending a lot of time on that. Cad Bane, there's another one I didn't even mention. There's another like sort of big cameo shows up in the Luke Skywalker episode.
Yeah, it's the same episode.
Yeah. So like you have just like so much stuff.
Cameos, and then, cameos.
Yeah, and then even getting to Ahsoka, they get back to the making sure that the story is centered on Ahsoka Tano and Sabine Wren. And they incorporate, cameos and other characters around it. Hera's not a cameo, she's like a main character, but like the first appearance of Thrawn, the first appearance of Ezra, those became kind of the moments, and they were moments as much for, hey, look at that guy, it's that guy who we remember from the other thing, as it was for what it meant for the characters. And so the Mando shows were getting a little bit heavy on the over reliance on familiar faces. And to me, again, the best Star Wars show to date is Andor. And like, who's the big cameo in Andor? Season 1. Yularen. Yularen is the big cameo.
It's true.
He's the big appearance. And to be fair, Joel makes this point in the chat: is Thrawn a cameo? He's kind of the main villain. Like that's a fair point, and the same thing kind of goes for Ezra. But what I mean is that like the story was becoming more about who's going to show up this week as opposed to what's going to happen to our heroes next week, or what are our heroes going to do. That's what I'm getting at. That's the problem with the cameos, or with the, over reliance on, big names showing up. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. Again, season 2 of Mando, the best season of that show.
Yeah.
And it has the most cameos, quote unquote. But it works. It works.
Yeah.
And Joel again makes a good point in the chat. 3PO is more of a cameo. I forgot about 3PO. 3PO shows up in there. There's a cameo, and he mentions Leia. That's almost a cameo. Anyways, I've been monologuing here for a minute, Ben. You tell me what you think of this.
No, I mean, I think I'm in complete agreement with you. Like at the end of the day, it has to service the story. And I think you can look at cameos and appearances and characters from so many different franchises, and look at really good ones, really bad ones. Like the really good ones are like you're talking about. I think Mandalorian season 2 is a kind of a gold standard in like, here's how you take a bunch of characters in a cinematic universe and put them in a show and make it feel natural. And I think also there is this, especially with like for lack of a better term, a cinematic universe, there is this like feeling of just like, we have to prove this is connected. We have to prove that this is all things. I always go back to different cinematic universe, but similar thing here, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was all in the early days, the MCU, it was about like, okay, Iron Man is in the Hulk movie and blah blah blah. This is connected, guys. You see it, you notice it, and then you get the Avengers and it explodes, and you're like, okay, I get it now. It's all connected. And what I loved about that era of the MCU was like they did Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was this movie that was not connected at all with anything else, and it was just its own thing. And I remember everyone was impressed, and I was especially impressed. Was just like, there's no cameos in this movie. It's not about that. It's just telling its own story, and it happens to be tangentially, related to this. It isn't until later that they finally meet the Avengers and all this kind of stuff. It's just that movie is a jewel unto itself. And I think going forward with Mandoverse, I think we're kind of over the hump of just like, all these people got to be in this show, whatever else. Like, you don't need to do that. Okay, just tell a good story. Ahsoka was maybe skirting the line a little bit. I think Ahsoka did okay. I think Skeleton Crew, you don't need cameos. Yeah. You don't need Mando and Grogu. Like the most. I was just thinking about this yesterday. If we have to have Mando and Grogu in this or literally any other character, just have them walk by in the background. Just have them walk by, not acknowledge them, nothing. Like I think they're one of the worst cameos. I think most people agree with me. Like some of the worst cameos in Star Wars history are in Rogue One. You have Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba. Oh. You have C-3PO and R2-D2. All of them are the camera panning to them and going, look, there they are. And there's no point in the story. It actually makes less sense that they're there because it makes a plot hole. It's just like, why are these characters there? It actually doesn't make sense that they're there.
Can I say though that I really like the 3PO R2 one. I really like that. It's dumb as can be, but I like it.
Like both of those moments, you remember, like sitting in the theater, in the Chinese theater, like the crowd erupted. We were all so excited, and I love it for that things, and I love it as a fan of just like, oh, there's those characters. They brought them back. There's this other connection. It's kind of signaling that we're getting close to New Hope. It's great, but you still have to take a step back and go like, wait a minute. If they're like, okay, Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba, they're on Jeddah, and then Jeddah blows up 5 minutes later. How do they get off the planet and get to Tatooine? How does that work? It's just like it starts unraveling.
Yeah, it's true, and it's bizarre, and you just want them. It's always you want the cameos to just fit in the story. You want them to make sense, and you don't need to force them in there. It wouldn't surprise me if there are some, smaller connections. Obviously, Vane, and we're going to talk more about him in a second. Like there's our tie back to Mando season 3, which, to be fair, didn't have a ton of cameos. It maybe just feels that way because Bo-Katan is so like present in it, and she came from the Clone Wars and that sort of thing. But if anything, Mando season 3 is a little bit guilty of like stunt casting with the Jack Black, Lizzo, Doc Brown.
Those are different kind of cameos where we don't know Captain Bombardier, but we know him. we know. Everybody watching The Mandalorian, like watching that episode, be like, oh, it's those guys. It's that girl.
Yeah, exactly. But and so, to be fair, again, Mando season 3, it gets away from that. It elevates Bo-Katan in a way where she's not just she is the co-lead of that season. She's very much on par with Din Djarin. But the cameos are like they're actor cameos. Even Ahmed Best, love Ahmed Best, and very happy for him. But the surprise of that isn't that Kelleran Beck showed up to save him. It's that Ahmed Best is there. Joseph Cooper in the chat says that Zeb was a cameo in season 3 of Mando. That's a good point. Very good point. And although that might be seeming to be leading to something bigger for everyone that saw the leaked footage of Mando and Grogu from D23.
I think the difference between a good cameo and a bad cameo, if I had to try to sum it up in one sentence, it's the difference between fans, between someone who's a fan like us, who recognizes everybody, who would catch it right off the bat, And normal people say, like my parents, would be watching it and would never bat an eye, would never think. My parents don't know who Zeb Aurelios is, okay? We watched that episode right over their heads. No things. Whereas, like, you know, with other things, it's like, oh, they're trying to tell us this person's important and I should know who this is, but I don't know who that is. And that's when it becomes a problem, I think, like as we do, as they say online, the glup shitto of the episode of just like, this is something that only hardcore fans are going to get. And I think Skeleton Crew has the chance of doing that, just like doing it with Vane and maybe a few other characters. I think those are the most exciting because it is like, you know, the hardcore fans get something to chew on. They get something to get excited about. And the other people kind of like, oh, what is that? Teach me about this. And you get to, you know, fan out. And I get to, like a mad person while we're watching The Mandalorian, have to explain to my parents, do you understand how this is important? Okay, do you understand the Mythosaur? He's been around for 40 years, and you know, it sounds like a crazy person.
I mean, that's kind of a cameo too. Like here's the thing. Here's how I look at these things. When everybody's making their totally real, not fake reaction videos, are they reacting and getting excited and freaking out over what's happening to the main character? Or are they getting excited and freaking out because somebody else has walked into the screen that they know from another thing? Zeb, God love him, you're excited because you know him from another thing. Mythosaur, you know him from another thing. Luke Skywalker, I mean, that one is kind of the culmination of that arc in the season, so it works on all accounts. But Luke in Book of Boba Fett is, you're getting excited because you know him from the other thing. Din Djarin for the first bunch of Book of Boba Fett, you're getting excited because you know him from another thing. And so it's funny how go ahead. All I'm saying, I'm getting at is I'm glad that these guys are seemingly putting the focus on their kids, or the kids who are the main characters in this story.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's funny how there was that discussion. I think there's a case to be made, especially considering where it went, of just like, does Luke Skywalker have to be in this? Is putting Luke Skywalker in that last episode, is it too much? Is it too much of a focus away from Din and Grogu and their story? And, you know, wherever you fall on that, I think you're well within your right. But it's funny how that discussion shifts from Din and Grogu being overshadowed to Din and Grogu overshadowing other characters. Like the next season in that show is the Book of Boba Fett, and why are Mando and Grogu in this show? They're overshadowing Book of Boba Fett story. And then, you know, and the same could be said for Skeleton Crew if they put in an obligatory Mando and Grogu cameo.
Yeah. Now, Joseph Cooper drops a super chat and says, what about Captain Carson Teva? Would he be a cameo? Also celebrating 4 months of being a member of the channel. Yay! Carson Teva, if anyone's going to show up, I kind of think it's him. We see X-Wings.
It would be a shock if he didn't.
Yeah, we see X-Wings in the trailer, and he has kind of filled, again, to make the Marvel comparison, he's filled kind of the Nick Fury role of, aside from season 1 of Mandalorian, he's been in everything.
Yeah.
Right? He's in Book of Boba for a quick second there, but he's there. He makes his debut in Mando 2. He plays a not insignificant role in Mando 3 and in Ahsoka. It wouldn't surprise me if he shows up to recruit Jode, or whatever Jude Law's character's name is, to recruit him for something.
Just go with that. Trust me.
Okay, I'm going with that. If he doesn't show up to recruit Jude Law, or just shows up and makes some kind of knowing comments about like, oh, you guys could be helpful in the fight to come. See it in theaters, you know, December 2029 or whenever Heir to the Empire comes out. But yeah, but definitely Carson Teva feels like a strong possibility. Be very happy for Paul if that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also in the sort of in the news relating to characters we've seen before showing up in Skeleton Crew. Again, the only one we know of is Vane, the pirate who first appeared in season 3 of Mando. Chris Ford said in the same Den of Geek interview, Vane was supposed to die in Mandalorian season 3, but they loved him, they let him live, and then we took him. This explains why Jon Favreau was able to get away with saying, oh yeah, there's no characters in season 3 of Mando who are, designed to spin off into other shows. And then, the first teasers for Skeleton Crew are literally airing at Star Wars Celebration London, and there's Vane in them. But Vane was developed to be a one-off Mando character, and then he had life beyond it, which I think has happened to a few characters in the Mandoverse. I think Fennec Shen is another character who was meant to be a one-off and became pretty important. And even if you go all the way back to Clone Wars, I think Bo-Katan was initially thought of as kind of a one-off. And then even as they were writing that first episode that she was in, they kind of realized, oh, there's something here. There's more potential here. And now look at her co-leading the Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah. And then you have, what's his name? I want to say Trapper Wolf. That's Dave Filoni's character. The other Mandalorian guy. He was supposed to die in the first episode that he appeared in. Yeah. And then they ended up becoming a big hero in the last episode. Yeah. So interesting stuff. Fun to see more of Vane. Looking forward to seeing where he's at. Let's in terms of other news, there's not too much else going on. A couple of interesting little tidbits. Just a new Star Wars show coming out in a few days. No big deal. Nothing too serious.
Yeah, but if you want to do other things while you wait, the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, you can watch it for free on the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special has no business being as good as it is. It is truly excellent. So if you haven't seen it, this is a great opportunity. And if you're playing Star Wars Hunters, or if you haven't yet and you want to because you've been waiting for it to come out on PC, well, January 28th. That's the day Steam Early Access begins for Star Wars Hunters on PC. All right, let's do some Ask the SWU stuff. So I mentioned earlier I ventured somewhere I have never gone before, and that is into the Star Wars Underworld Discord channel to propose that people, not in addition to or in place of submitting their own questions for Ask the SWU, answer a specific Skeleton Crew question that I was thinking about, because by and large, I've really enjoyed the marketing for Skeleton Crew.
Me too.
There's some things, we could maybe nitpick. I do think they're maybe going a little too heavy on the 80s nostalgia. And I'm like there's one commercial that's on TV right now that's it's meant to look like it's on VHS. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, come on. That's the best one, though.
I know one. It's good. But you and I, Ben, we're the last people that are nostalgic for something like that. Anyone younger than this, if Hannah were here, do you think she's getting really nostalgic? People that are younger than even her, are they nostalgic for that? Are we just, I feel like Skeleton Crew can bring in a lot of new audiences, and they're really just playing to the classics, to the people who are already there.
I feel like I'm only nostalgic for the 80s because I've been brought up and told to be nostalgic for the 80s.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of Stranger Things and being like, oh, recognize this. And it's this is literally before my time. It's cool. I love the 80s. A lot of good music, good movies, but
all that's missing is Finn Wolfhard being in this, because he's just become the stand-in for 80s nostalgia.
Don't even say it. Okay, that's going to be the stunt casting on this. They're going to bring in Finn Wolfhard and Skeleton Crew. Don't even try it. Okay, Jon Favreau's in the corner being like, what we could do. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, it's again I know this show is building upon what people remember of Goonies and Stand By Me and E.T. and there's posters that are coming out that are basically the E.T. poster, just with X-Wings in front of the moon instead of a kid on a bike with the aliens. But I just sometimes I wonder, are they reaching out to new audiences? Are they actually, or are they just trying desperately to hold on to the old one? And that's how you wind up with crap like The Rise of Skywalker. Anyways, the point I'm getting at is I have really generally really enjoyed the Skeleton Crew marketing, and the trailers I think have been a lot of fun. And I really do like the idea of these kids essentially being us as kids, loving Star Wars and playing Star Wars. And there's some great moments in the trailers where they have they have their own like toy lightsabers and they're playing. I have some really shoddy screenshots of this that I took from my phone. But so I really like this. So I put the question out to everybody in the Discord and said, inspired by this scene in the Skeleton Crew trailer, see below, or if you're listening, see on screen, or if you're watching, see on screen. If you're listening, hopefully you understood what we were talking about when we described it. What was your Star Wars fantasy as a kid? Did you dream of saving the galaxy as a Jedi? Would you have wished to have been a smuggler like Han Solo or a bounty hunter like Boba Fett? Or did you secretly or not so secretly wish to join the dark side or something else completely? Sound off here and we will feature some on the show. So Ben, let me ask you.
I knew you were going to ask me first.
Ben, we're going to throw it to you first. What was your Star Wars fantasy as a kid? Like when you were sitting there daydreaming about being in Star Wars, what were you daydreaming about?
My memory doesn't go that far back. I'm sorry. No, I think I would imagine look, I've had a lot of lightsabers in my day going way back. I would imagine, I mean, it's the cop-out answer, but it is the one true answer. Like being a Jedi, like it's one of the coolest things. I talked a few weeks back about being, being a Jedi for Halloween. And that was kind of knocking on the door of just like, I'm a Jedi. Yeah, this is cool. Like that was it. Like that was the thing to be, and to have that plastic lightsaber and to, theater of the mind yourself into the Star Wars galaxy, because there's just no things, even though like I understand that like I would probably be a sucky Jedi. I probably would not be good at it at all. I would probably be one of those, you're cut your arm off, kid.
Yeah. I'm sort of in the same boat in that like it was always a Jedi or some sort of variation of that. I do have one other one, but I'll share that one later. But it was a Jedi, and even though I was never like super into superhero stuff as a kid, the whole secret identity, like, being the mild-mannered person in your day-to-day life and then going off and being a hero and saving the galaxy, that always was interesting to me. And so I was never like a Jedi in the Star Wars galaxy per se. I was like myself living my life, going to school, and then my comlink would go off and I would be needed. And I would jump into my Jedi Interceptor, episode 3 era, and fly off to battle Sith Lords and Separatists and Stormtroopers alongside, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was sort of that. It was like there was like a little bit. For whatever reason, I didn't want to leave my life completely. I wanted to keep the, I'm realizing where this came from. It wasn't superheroes. It wasn't like Spider-Man or Batman. I wanted to be Jedi Hannah Montana. That's
okay.
I wanted the best of both worlds.
Makes sense.
Speaking of nostalgia.
Speaking of nostalgia. And there's people younger that's like, Hannah, who? What?
The kids love Hannah Montana. They're finding it on Disney Plus. In a few years, they'll be making Star Wars commercials that are themed around like Disney Channel promotions from when we were kids. But we got some fun answers in the chat, in the Discord, I should say. Vlad Sanders said, I wanted to be a Jedi. I even used to write my own little fan fiction with myself being transported to the galaxy far, far away and training with the Solo twins.
Oh, Very specific.
Yeah, again, this is interesting. We're gonna get like little insight into everybody's era that they grew up in, because if you wanted to train with the Solo twins, we're talking Jason and Jaina Solo. This is legend stuff. This is Kevin J. Anderson, Rebecca Moesta, Young Jedi Knights, YA novels material. Like, that's where we're going with that.
And I mean, that's a very lucrative era because it was so nebulous for so long. Before the sequel trilogy, it was just like, obviously all the books got very detailed at points, but for the most part, it was just like this huge era where the Skywalker family, doubled and tripled in size, and there was all this drama, and a lot of people died, and it was messy, but like it was like to put yourself in that era, and like if you grew up with those books, that was the big thing back in the day.
Everything was like hunky dory through the 90s. Like, the kids are just kind of growing up, having adventures. There was danger, but they were YA books, and YA books, at least Star Wars YA at the time, wasn't when things got too bad. But then New Jedi Order hits, and they start dropping like flies. Down goes, and of course it's the youngest one to die first. Spoilers for Star by Star by Troy Denning 20 some odd years ago.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the only people left at the end of all that were Han, Luke, and Leia. I think everyone else died.
Yeah, as Han, Luke, and Leia, and Jaina made it through. Because first Anakin dies. Well, first Chewbacca dies, then Anakin dies, then Jason Solo falls to the dark side,
right?
Because of course the Skywalker descendant's gonna fall to the dark side. Then he has to die. But before he dies, Luke's wife dies in Mara Jade. We're just gonna spoil Legacy of the Force here, and then you're basically left with Jaina Solo and Ben Skywalker, not to be confused with Ben Solo at the end of it. But they put those two through hell as well in Fate of the Jedi.
Yeah, seriously.
I got some Legends knowledge. We don't talk a lot of books on this show, but we got some Legends knowledge.
Just a tiny bit. I love back in the day, in contrast to now, when it's the most controversial thing in Star Wars fandom is, what happened to Luke Skywalker and how he died. Back in the day, it was, should they actually kill Luke Skywalker in the EU, because they just don't have the cojones to do it, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, and Joel also pointing out something, a tremendous bit of Legends canon that gets overlooked. Jaina Solo, Han and Leia's daughter, marries the future emperor of the Empire, but he's like a good dude. He's like, he's like a nice guy. Yeah. Shout out Jagged Fell. Man, what a time. Those 2000s era Legends books. There's a reason. Like they're good. Like, they're enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but there was a reason they had to reboot for episode 7. There was no
I still contend.
No possible way.
They could have said episode 7. They could have kept the continuity. They could have said episode 7.
Could have said it after a decade's worth of Bantam novels set after Return of the Jedi, after New Jedi Order, after Legacy of the Force, after the Swarm War, or whatever that trilogy is called, after Fate of the Jedi and Apocalypse.
Episode 7 should have just been an adaptation of Sword of the Jedi. That should have done that. Okay, we were robbed.
We're going deep. There's some. I don't know how many.
We're making
Legends
people
fans.
mad. There's some hurt there.
How many people started listening to the show when we were promoting Legends Con, and they're like, "Hey, this is like cool show. They don't talk much about Legends, but like, hey," and now we're going deep on it and slightly ripping it. Even though there's good, there's a lot of good in Legends. There's a lot of good. Just.
I have gone back. Recent years, I've gone back and listened from my account, but read an equal amount of Legends novels and canon novels, trying to catch up, because there's a lot of good stuff back in the day.
Oh yeah, there's like, I have everybody, I have a bookshelf of unread books, and a lot of Star Wars ones are on there, and there's a lot of there's a handful of canon books I've fallen behind. I pretty much only keep up with the High Republic stuff now. There's a handful of canon books on there, and there's a bunch of Legends books that I bought back in the day. And when I'm thinking about like, I want to read a Star Wars, that isn't the High Republic. What am I going to read next? And it's as tempting to grab a Legends novel as it is to grab a canon novel. Because again, there's tremendous stuff. I reread the Bane trilogy, the Darth Bane trilogy a couple years ago.
That's good.
Fantastic. I reread Heir to the Empire this summer. How about that? That was fun.
I every once in a while I'm just like, I need to rewrite that. I need to go back and do that again because it's good. I love when and you go back and like read the Revenge of the Sith novelization.
Yeah.
And just like how it ties in with canon stuff, that it ties in with legend stuff, because that's what was going on at the time. Like it's amazing the connections there are, but also the disconnections.
Yeah. And there was I had another point I was going to make, but I've forgotten it. Oh well, it'll come back to me.
That's all been the book talk.
Oh yeah, all that to say, Star Wars Legends, a lot of fun in there. Wouldn't have fit with the movies, but a lot of fun in there. Let's keep going with some more Discord answers. Jedi Cat 1965 says, I wanted to be a smuggler riding with Han and Chewie, dodging Imperial and local authorities. I don't know. It wasn't until I was posing this question today that I stopped to consider that would be people's answer. I don't know if I was just too much of like a goody two shoes, and I'm like, I want to be a Jedi and save the galaxy. Yeah. That like the idea of like being a smuggler and like doing like dangerous illicit things with Han and Chewie never really like factored into my Star Wars daydreaming. But what about you, Ben?
Yeah. No, I think like I love the idea that it might, in a little bit of a way, bring out your dark side. Because you're living under a fascist regime, and maybe you do some illegal stuff just to fight back. Maybe that gives you a license to do something you might normally be frowned upon.
Yeah. Who knows? And who knows? Maybe it'll be good training for the next 4 years. I'm not going there.
Don't go there.
Not going there. Speaking of embracing your dark side, Joel Davis says, I used to imagine being Palpatine's personal assistant, organizing his schedule, giving him papers to sign, attending cabinet meetings, going to those Soviet-style congresses where everyone claps in unison, that sort of thing.
Joel, I didn't know he had it in him.
Yeah, look, we know Joel. He's on Ion Cannon. He's a good pal of the show. I am 99% sure he's joking, but I'm choosing to believe that this is his actual Star Wars fantasy, that he just wants to be Palpatine's yes man. He wants to be there. Palpatine's in the corner going, unlimited power. Joel's like, but actually we need to get the Senate to approve the financing and you need to sign here. And Palpatine's like, oh, all right.
But it is that thing on the internet where you'll have people that like their factions of a certain faction of Star Wars, and a lot of people love the Empire, and it's because of the iconography, and they love Vader, they love Palpatine, and totally get it. But then sometimes you'll come across somebody, they like the Empire a little too much, and you're kind of sighing. I'm going like, dude, you realize this is fake, right? That they're the bad guys. You remember that, right? Please tell me. Say psych.
There's a reason why the 501st, like their tagline for a while was "bad guys doing good." It's like no.
Yeah.
Even though we are dressed as the evil characters, we're like a charitable organization, and we're gonna do good. It's not like that. There's a I don't know. You haven't seen this show, Ben, but maybe somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. There's a British comedy show called Peep Show. It stars Mitchell and Webb, the comedy duo, and in one of them is like a history nerd, and he meets a new friend who's also a history nerd and gets him to join up in like a local like World War II society, and they wind up at a historical event dressed as Nazis. And
oh no.
And the friend starts saying things where at first he's like talking about Germany stuff in the 30s and 40s, that like, so he's like in character, but then he's like, they start saying stuff about contemporary England that's very Nazi-ish. And the character Mark, who's one of the main characters on the show, is going, oh come on, I had to make a new friend, and he had to be a real Nazi. Like It's
I don't
dark
wanna get-
humor, but it's funny.
Oh, it's dark humor, and also, I've been to some weird corners of the internet, especially Reddit, and read some threads. That stuff happens in real life. I'm just going to tell you right there.
Oh, Ben, I was expecting you to say, given your geographic location in the U.S., that you've been to some Civil War reenactments where.
Thank God. Thank God. No. Thank God. I have not experienced that.
Not going there. Not going there.
I mean, right, you might run into somebody somewhere, or you might get approached on the beach like I was one time, and someone starts, telling you how the Civil War really was about states' rights. It wasn't about slavery. That was the hot take that he had.
Oh my God! All right, effing Mississippi, man. All right. Next up, Jesse B says, as a youngling, I would have been tempted and most likely would have succumbed to the power of the dark side. Darth Gullible, they've called me.
Oh.
I like that name. I like Darth Gullible. That feels like something that should have been used in Robot Chicken or Lego Star Wars
or George would have actually used that, I think.
Yeah, but George would have been like, it would have been Darth Guilabo or something. Savaggio Press.
Gulabi.
Guilabo. It's just I'm Darth Guilabo.
Love it.
And damn, Jesse.
Love it.
Love it. And Daisy chimes in here and says, never thought about being a Jedi or anything Star Wars, really. I just wanted to be a dragon. By which, of course, we assume they mean crate dragon.
Crate dragon. And naturally.
Not Smaug or something fun like that.
Or a Zillow Beast.
Or Zillow Beast, yeah, crate dragon or Zillow Beast. Great answers that everybody submitted. I like hearing that. I like dipping into our own Star Wars histories there. I will say I had one other Star Wars fantasy as a kid beyond, my Hannah Montana Jedi life. And that was to be selected by George Lucas to be the next Star Wars movie maker. I wanted to be, mine was, I didn't know it at the time, but it was to be Dave Filoni. I didn't know who Dave was. I don't think Dave wasn't Dave at that point. He was probably still working on King of the Hill or something.
I mean, if you could go back in time, just go to Star Wars Celebration, wear a Plo Koon costume, just wander around until George approaches you and you're in.
Yeah, that's how it happened, right? George was just wandering around at Celebration 3 in 2005 and was like, find me a guy in the most obscure Jedi costume you can find. And someone went, hey, or Rick McCallum was like, how would Rick McCallum say it? Rick McCallum would be like, holy shit, George, there's fucking Plo Koon over there.
I was going to say it had to have expletives in it if it was Rick McCallum.
Yeah, that is how Rick would say it. And George went up to him and said, hey, do you know anything about writing a TV show? And Dave went, maybe. And George went, you're hired.
This is a true story, guys. True story.
Such a legend was born. All right, Ben, how are you on time? Could we do a few regular questions too?
Yeah, we got. Let's do some regular questions. Why not?
All right, let's just do some more regular questions. All right, so this is more of a classic. We're moving to sort of the classic Ask the SWU segment here. People have been submitting these on Discord, so we'll answer those. And if you are listening live and you want to throw one in the live chat, super chat's the way to guarantee it. But if you just post a good question, we'll tackle it as well. All right, first one is from Kajira. Kajira says, I haven't seen Andor yet. I enjoyed Rogue One, though. So give me a good reason to watch Andor.
Interesting.
Kajira, do you like good things? Do you like things that are
do you
high
like
quality?
Good TV?
Yeah, do you enjoy high quality storytelling with great performances, writing, direction, and visual effects and music? Because boy, have I got a show for you. Look, if you liked Rogue One, Andor is very much an extension of that. It takes, the tone of Rogue One and builds on it. It extends it. It is, there are no Jedi. I don't even know if there's any talk of Jedi. I don't think there is. It's very much people under the thumb of the Empire. And it asks the question, what makes someone push back? What makes somebody push back? What drives an individual, a community, an official, in the case of Mon Mothma, to decide they're going to push back. And it goes beyond just the decision of, hey, I'm going to be a rebel. It goes through the second guessing that. It explores what that means. It explores the sacrifices therein. So if that's sort of the story, if you're interested in that kind of storytelling and those sorts of themes, I think it's really good. As I said, it's just like well made. We just sort of listed off all the filmmaking elements it excels at, and just the stakes feel real, even though we know what happens to Cassian. And it's there's really cool action sequences that aren't your classic Star Wars action sequences. They aren't dogfights between spaceships. Sometimes they involve spaceships, but they aren't like, X-Wing and TIE Fighter kind of things. It's stuff that we see in the movies. There's sort of ground operations that aren't, much to Denis Villeneuve's approval. There aren't Ewoks like in there. Like it's quite these sequences are quite intense. The for everybody who has watched the show, the Eye of Aldhani is one of the most like incredible Star Wars sequences I think we've ever seen. It's just amazing. And they followed that up in the next arc with the One Way Out sequence. I'm going to, again, try to be vague here, that somehow manages to one-up it on like an emotional sense. Maybe not on a visual sense, but on like an emotional sense. It is just like, I hate making like declarative objective statements about quality, because that's like, you respond to different art. Everybody responds to different things in different ways. And the way you respond to something is not any more, it's not any less valid than how I respond to it. They're the same level of valid because it informs how we feel. And so, but Andor, like it to me, it's the best of the Star Wars shows. It is sort of the highest quality, but it also delves into some really sort of central Star Wars themes, but it goes at them in a completely different way than anything else we've seen before.
Yeah, it's and like you're saying, like it's very easy to say, because I would think it was Frosty from Collider was in an interview with Daisy Ridley, and he was like trying to get her to watch Andor. She was like, "Oh my God, have you seen Andor? You need to watch Andor." And you basically saying similarly, it's like, it's so good. And obviously it's very easy to say, well, go watch it. It's good. But as we've learned, like as a wise and very evil person once said, good is a point of view. Like a lot of people are not fans of Andor. And good is a subjective point of view. And I think a lot of people don't like Andor because it is so different from other Star Wars stories. And it is because it is that Jedi Force fantastical fantasy element. That's something that I personally came away from, watching these shows and being like, oh, I really love The Mandalorian because it's this grounded thing, but it's also very goofy. It has some fantastical elements. And then I watched Andor and I was like, Andor is so well written and it's so gritty and it's so real and it feels real and it's hitting that note. And then I watched Ahsoka and I was like, this kind of melds the two a little bit. That's why Ahsoka landed so well for me. But I get why people say, okay, if it doesn't have Jedi, if it doesn't have the Force in it, it's not Star Wars. That's an opinion a lot of people have. I don't agree with it, but it's a valid opinion to have. Yeah. And if go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, Andor is oddly divisive among Star Wars fans. Not in the way that we think about division now, where it's related to politics or whatever. People aren't fighting over, the casting of the show the way they do with, The Force Awakens and all of that, nonsense that took place and continues to take place. Or Acolytes, or but it's it's divisive because there are a lot of people whose Star Wars opinions I really value who looked at that show and went, nah, not for me. It's just not for me. It doesn't work. It's not hitting on the same levels that, Bad Batch or Ahsoka or Obi-Wan or other shows do. That said, lots of people who Star Wars opinions, who I really respect, really love the show,
right?
Like we do, you and I. And then there's lots of people who are kind of a bit removed from Star Wars who look at Andor the same way they look at Rogue One and go, oh yeah, this is a Star Wars that I can get into because it isn't the same old that we sometimes run the risk of doing, where everything's a super weapon and there's another wisecracking droid and we all know the Star Wars tropes.
Yeah, and I think not to call anyone out, but I think the one toxic element to Andor and the fandom around Andor is that it is so well made, and I think it's hard to argue that it isn't like well written and whatever else. But there is this kind of air among the hardcore fans of Andor. They're like, this is the best thing in Star Wars. This is the best TV show and definitely the best Star Wars thing. And you cannot argue otherwise. You're not allowed to. And that is obviously not a healthy way to come into a conversation.
No.
I mean,
to be fair, it is. But we shouldn't make people feel bad if they have another opinion, because again, as with these shows, as we were just saying, with all these shows, everyone's opinion is valid as long as it's coming from their own experience and not talking points that are screamed at them from YouTube.
Right. And getting not to get too far off of Kajira's question here, because I am genuinely trying to give an answer here, and the answer that I'm trying to get at is just like, definitely watch it, but be prepared, because I think even for me, who's someone who came out of really enjoying Andor and thinking it's one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, it did take a bit getting used to. It had to get that first couple episodes getting settled into the tone, and this is Star Wars, but it's different. And you have to accept it. You have to get into it and learn it and understand that this isn't your mommy's or your granddaddy's Star Wars. Okay, this is different. This is Tony Gilroy's Star Wars, and he approaches this thing so differently. It's a good thing, but also you have to be prepared for that, because it's honestly, I will say, it's not for everyone. Okay, there's a lot of people that don't like Andor, and it's valid, and I get it. But I think if you go in with an open mind, I think you will enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think the sort of make or break point in it for everybody is the Eye of Aldani. If you get to that point in the show and you're still thinking, what are these bozos talking about? Then maybe you are safe in stepping back from it or continuing. One way out is great too. But like if you to me, that's the moment where it all comes together and you see the full vision for what this show is. And from there, it sort of slingshots it all the way to the finale, which is
I hate doing this because shows, because we've all loved a show, but we know a show is like, you have to give it a few episodes. And I'm not saying the first few episodes of Andor are bad by any means necessary.
No.
But if it's not pulling you in, it's hard to stick with a show. But I genuinely think like give Andor the full season. Give it the full season. Yeah. I think it really deserves that. I think especially on a rewatch, I think when we were first watching it when it was coming out, people were like, okay, what is this going on kind of week to week? I think if you can binge it, because the episodes aren't super long, I think it's really lends itself to that. I think getting to the Aldani arc, and especially the One Way Out arc, that's good stuff. And I think even if you're like, not totally wrapping my head around what's going on here, the emotional level and the emotional intensity of it will grab you.
And you know what? The whole like, oh, I shouldn't have to wait for a show to grab me. You have to wait for it to get good. That's not how TV works. TV used to be a thing that was just on, and so many great shows were allowed to have the time to become great because it was just on, and that was all there was. And now there's so much, we're constantly being hit in the face with new things that we miss out on greatness because there's so much going on that people give up on something that is just okay because there's something else out there that could potentially be good. And so you miss out on greatness because we're not allowing things to grow. See Acolyte, comma, because, that's what happened with that show.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so much content these days. And like, on the one hand, that's good. On the other hand, it means we're not patient anymore with our stories. And sometimes stories need time to grow and space to breathe.
It's a series. It's a TV show. It's not meant to sit down in one. I know everyone loves to binge stuff, but it's not designed that way. You have to give it time. You have to be patient with it. And speaking, our attention spans just aren't very good. And I'm speaking from experience. I have a very short attention span.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Same. I get distracted all the time. All right. I hope we answered that question. Check out Andor.
I hope so. Jeez.
Next up, we've got one from Gilster10 who says, how come we've never seen Dooku and Palpatine meeting for the first time in canon? I feel like they missed the opportunity in Tales of the Jedi and Dooku Jedi Lost. We know that Dooku was an agent of Palpatine when he had Maul as his apprentice, and he took Qui-Gon's death very personally. The Sidious Maul Dooku chronology is a confusing one and weird thanks to the Lost Ones Clone Wars episode. Yeah. They haven't ever nailed down quite when Dooku left, why he left. I mean, but we do see when and why, I guess, in Dooku Jedi Lost. But like what leads him from screw the Jedi, I'm done with the Jedi, to I'm a Sith Lord. That is a story that I think is still left to be told, and I think they're waiting for the right medium to tell it. Dooku Jedi Lost was about him, what it takes for him to leave the Jedi Order, and Tales of the Jedi was about him cementing his place on the dark side, killing Yaddle. But there is still that space in the middle, and it wouldn't shock me if Dave Filoni wants to go back and do another Tales of the Jedi about Dooku and tell that specific story, because I think it's very telling that Dooku was the first character after Ahsoka Tano to get Tales of the Jedi episodes.
Yeah, I think
because Ahsoka's Dave's character, and Dooku, I wonder if that's a character he always wanted to do more with on Clone Wars, and they just never got the chance.
No, I think you kind of hit it on the head there. Like, as much as I did really like those Tales of the Jedi episodes with Dooku, and I think obviously I want other characters to get the spotlight in a theoretical Tales of the Jedi season 2 or season 3 or whatever you're going to call it. I do really want to I want to get more into Dooku's story, and I think there's stuff with Sifo Dyas there. There's stuff with his, I think they hint at a little bit with, him being in Tales of the Jedi, like him being mad at Palpatine for allowing Maul to kill Qui-Gon. He's pissed about that. I love that dynamic. I like this idea. It's like this guy's trying to be a Sith, but he's like, well, dude, you didn't tell me this was going to happen. And I love that dynamic. And there's a lot more Dooku story. It's amazing how, this kind of feeling in generally in pop culture, whether it's general media, whatever else, people kind of dunk on Dooku because he's got a goofy name. But
you went viral for trying to figure out what Count Dooku's first name was a few years ago.
I went super viral. I asked what should Count Dooku's first name be, and a bunch of people that thought they were hilarious just till the day is done said so, as in So Dooku. And I'm surprised I'm not still getting those notifications on my account all these years later.
Post it on Blue Sky and see what happens. Maybe you'll go viral again.
Hey, I can do it all my viral posts again. You just gave me a great idea. But Dooku, despite, yes, a kind of a silly name, he's easily one of the most intriguing, one of the deepest characters from the prequel trilogy and Star Wars overall. He's so deep and fascinating, and you could freaking do a whole Dooku movie, for real. You could do it.
Yeah, I've said this before, and also I'll just quickly mention it again here. I hate to sort of like Monday morning quarterback, the Star Wars movies and the Star Wars shows and all that stuff. Like, George was telling a specific story and he told it the best way he could. One thing I've wondered about with the prequels is would they have been a stronger story overall if you found a way to combine the Qui-Gon and Dooku characters?
I thought about that too.
Because, in Attack of the Clones, Dooku is talked about a lot. And when he walks in to see Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's like, traitor, and Dooku's like, oh no, I assure you, this has nothing to do with me. Like, how much more bite would that have had if we found, if episode 1, instead of ending with Qui-Gon dying, it ends with him going, you know what? The Jedi are screwed. I'm out. Peace.
Yeah.
And then shows up in Attack of the Clones as the leader of the separatist movement. And then he shows up and faces off with Obi-Wan. We might be more inclined to listen to what he has to say and take him seriously as a character. Yeah. And it would be more painful for Obi-Wan. It'd be more painful for Anakin. It might, smooth Anakin's transition to the dark side a little bit. Like there might be something there. Now, Qui-Gon is a character that I love and would hate to get rid of because he plays such an important role in the story and all that stuff. So like, I'm not advocating for getting rid of Qui-Gon Jinn as a character. It just does feel like there's maybe a way that, things could have been a little bit more cohesive across the movies. Because really, going from like the prequels really feel like episode 1, 2, and 3 are like their own separate entities,
right?
Much more so than the original trilogy, and certainly even more so than the sequel trilogy. And the sequel trilogy, we've talked about all the tumult behind the scenes with those movies, going from JJ to Ryan to Colin Trevorrow to back to JJ. Like it's but like going from Force Awakens into Last Jedi, I think personally, I know not everybody agrees with it, I think that's very smooth, whereas going from Phantom Menace into Attack of the Clones is a little choppy. You had to really have to get your feet under you again.
Yeah, and it's interesting because George has always been open and honest about the fact that doing A New Hope, he got to the end and he was like, oh, I don't have anything to do for this Ben Kenobi character. Let's just kill him off. And then he gets to Empire Strikes Back. He's like, oh crap, I need a Jedi to train Luke, so I have to create this new character named Yoda. And of course, that worked out pretty well, I think, if we can all agree. But like, you can kind of apply that same logic to the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and just like, okay, did Qui-Gon really have to die? Like, I like Qui-Gon's character. I like how he is just this not one note, but a one moment character. He's there at the beginning, but his impact is felt through the entire saga, I think.
Yeah. And
he is someone who is he's a lot of people's favorite Jedi, even though he's only in one freaking movie. That's a great thing for a character. So I think that's an interesting thing, but you do have to like, okay, if George could do it all over again, what would his honest opinion be? What would you do if you were given the keys to the kingdom? What's your Star Wars fantasy to go back and redo the Star Wars movie? What do you do then?
You can wave your magic wand. Yeah. It's one thing that I think the originals and the sequels have going for them in their sort of cohesiveness as trilogies is that they have the same villains across all three films. It's Vader and the Emperor. Right? It's Vader across all three, and the Emperor kind of comes in. He's talked about in 4. He's present for a moment in 5, and then he's really there in 6.
Yeah.
In sequels, you have Kylo Ren is there the whole time. Snoke is there for 7 and 8, and then Palpatine kind of comes in and takes over for episode 9. But Kylo is the through line, much as Vader is the through line through the originals. In the prequels, yes, Palpatine is there, and he's manipulating things, but there isn't like a main villain that the characters are confronting over and over again. Dooku kind of fills that role going from 2 to 3, but he's only really in the back third of 3, in the back third of 2 and the front third of 3. Like, he's really only in there for a hot minute in each movie. And again, if like, this is like this is a pointless argument, but let's follow it through to its logical conclusion, because it is never, it's just a thought experiment. If you took the Qui-Gon Dooku character in episode 1, have him sort of serve the same role he serves in episode 1, but decide to leave the Jedi instead of dying, and then show up in episode 2 as the villain and stay on as the villain into the beginning of 3, then like there's a very consistent through line through the movies that kind of creates more of a story plot cohesion, rather than just as Joel puts it in the chat, thematic cohesion.
Yeah, and
that is the strength of the prequels, where the sequels very much fall flat, in my opinion.
I think in a lot of people's opinion, and I think like with the prequels, it's a totally different animal, because it's like George and the audience being painfully aware that this is leading to something. This is leading to Vader, and you already have your main bad guy. You have the biggest, best, most iconic bad guy coming at the end of all this. How do you lead up to that, and how do you do something that doesn't overshadow Vader? And I love the whole analogy about like each villain in the prequel trilogy represents a piece of Vader. Darth Maul is this, kind of watchdog, attack dog thing. Count Dooku is this very distinguished, political person, and Grievous is this, a cyborg. I love that analogy, but again, it does like thematically overall, it's this thing where it kind of feels chopped up and it's not things, and it works. Like, I love the prequel trilogy. I'm not, I've spent my 32 years defending the prequel trilogy against all kinds of criticisms, but, it doesn't mean that they could have been done better. And there is some certain things, and it is amazing how, we're going to talk about these things till we die. Okay. Let's just be honest. We're going to talk about this thing till we die. What could it have done? What could they have done better in the sequels? What could they have done in the prequels? And they make the fourth trilogy. We're going to be talking about what they could have done in that trilogy too. We're never going to be happy.
Get ready, Simon Kinberg. We're going to spend the rest of your life and the rest of our lives dissecting that thing piece by bitter piece. Excellent question, Guildsir 10. I don't know if we answered it, but I think we had it.
I honestly, I don't know if we answered any of these questions.
No, I don't know if we do either. Plagueis 66 says, "Hey Dominic, you can have Kyle Dubas back. He's killing me, Smalls." Kyle Dubas, of course, former general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs and current general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah, Pittsburgh having a tough year. A friend of mine is a big Penguins fan, and she has been suffering this year. So I understand where you're coming from. I always liked Kyle Dubas. I thought his approach to the game is quite interesting, and I'd like to see him in a smaller market with a team where there aren't already several established stars like there were with the Penguins and frankly the Leafs when he got in there. I'd like to see him build a team from scratch. Give him the next expansion club, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, tough year for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But again, if you want to talk some hockey, if you want to talk some Toronto Maple Leafs, make sure you're tuning in to Game Over Toronto live after every Leafs game on the Game Over Toronto YouTube channel, and available in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts from. We have a lot of fun over there. All right. I'm looking at this next question from Joel. This is a long one. All right.
He warned me about this one.
Yeah, we're gonna do this one, and it may wind up being the last one, although maybe we'll squeeze one more in. But there's lots of stuff, so many more questions that we'll perhaps get to in future weeks. This one from Joel says, "Hello, Underworld. My question for you guys is this: do you think Disney imposes an unofficial quota for the amount of shows and movies for Lucasfilm to release a year? The reason I ask is that I truly believe Disney was okay dropping the 2023 Rogue Squadron date, because back then it was all about streaming and movies were not a priority. So long as they were delivering on streaming shows, everything was okay. Now that the priority across all studios is back to film, I do wonder if Disney will want to start to see at least some bare minimum results, less the heads roll." This is why my sneaking suspicion is that Disney unofficially has a quota from Lucasfilm at least releasing one movie a year, which is why they were okay dropping the December 2026 release date, but will want something film-wise for 2027. This is also why I think Lucasfilm does a lot of projects, or has a lot of projects in the oven at some level, be it Filoni, the Lando movie, Mangold, Kinberg, etc. So at least they have something to give to to Disney. Excuse me. So like they're working, they have so many things going that eventually one of these things is going to work, and they can go to Disney and be like, here it is. For if Lucasfilm had not been able to delivering on something on some level, if Lucasfilm had not been delivering on some level to Disney, I do think Kathleen Kennedy and maybe even the entire Lucasfilm leadership would have been fired a long time ago. Anyway, that is my question. Does your business insight and gut tell you that Disney may have at least a mandate for one movie minimum at least starting in 2026 and beyond? Joel, let's have a conversation about proofreading. I'm kidding. I also end the question with this last thought. Ever since Force Awakens, we have always managed to have at least one live action Star Wars project a year, non-stop. So is there a quota from Disney that says, Lucasfilm, we need you to get off your butts and make us a Star Wars movie every year from now on? That is your priority above all else.
I feel like no. I think no, because we're what, 5 years past the release of Rise of Skywalker. There hasn't been a movie since then. There's not going to be a movie this year, and there's not going to be a movie next year. And Kathleen Kennedy is still in charge. It isn't like a team, getting back to sports here, but like a coach coaching a football team or a hockey team and being like, if you lose a certain amount of games, your contract is up, you're out. Like that happened to the Saints, I think, recently. I don't pay attention to football, but I know that happened. So like, I don't think that's the case. I think if that were the case, like I think Kathleen Kennedy maybe would be out and there would be something else. I think there's pressure on them. I think there's pressure on Lucasfilm. I think there's a chance that one of the Bobs has been to Kathleen Kennedy's office and been like, so about that Star Wars movie, we would like to make some more money. Please make us a Star Wars movie, please. I don't think it's a like, you have to get it done by, by have a movie out by this time or you're out. I think it's just like a general understanding of just like, we're in the business to make movies and we'd like you to do this thing. And yes, Disney owns Lucasfilm, but I would at least hope it's not an authoritarian type of situation where they're demanding things and firing people if they don't get their way. I think hopefully it's just like a healthy, we're doing the creative process thing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I do think there is a quota. Mm-hmm. I do think there is a mandate from Disney to Lucasfilm at this point. And I think Joel is right that if they don't start hitting that quota regularly, there's going to be changes. It's funny that the guy brought up Kyle Dubas. There's kind of an interesting parallel here. Kyle was the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs for several seasons. And in all those seasons, there were a lot of high expectations for the team. And every year except one, the team did excellent in the regular season, made it to the playoffs, and then lost in the first round. Always in game 7, always in the deciding, like the last game. It was always in the most heartbreaking fashion every single time, except 2023 when they won a first round series, made it to the second round, and lost in 5 games. It was roller coaster of emotions. But there came a point when he was let go because he wasn't succeeding at his job. It wasn't enough to just have a good regular season team. They needed a good playoff team. They needed a team that would win more than one round every 5 years. They needed a team that would go on a deep run, because the way I look at it now is the streaming stuff is that's the regular season for Lucasfilm. They figured that out more or less. They can do that. They can put out, stuff that gets decent numbers. We can argue about the Acolyte numbers all we want, but like, it's not like that show was bad. It's not like it did bad numbers. Like it maybe didn't do as well as you wanted, but it still deserved a season 2 with what it had. But anyways, like they've done that. But the playoffs are the movies. Playoffs are the movies because a successful movie will make $1 billion. Force Awakens made $1 billion. Force Awakens made $2 billion. Rogue One made $1 billion. Last Jedi made $1 billion. Rise of Skywalker, even Rise of Skywalker made $1 billion. So Mando Grogu, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room there where it doesn't have to make a billion with a B. Maybe it only has to make $800 million or something. But if it either somehow finds a way to get canceled or doesn't come out like, or it comes out like and does what Solo does, it wouldn't surprise me if there start to be changes. And look, do I think Kathleen Kennedy is going to get summarily fired? I don't think Bob Iger is going to call up Kathleen Kennedy the way Brendan Shanahan called up Kyle Dubas and said, "Get out." I don't think that's going to happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if Kathleen Kennedy is quietly asked to retire, because she's retirement age. If any normal person that's Kathleen Kennedy's age, if they say, "You know what, I'm done working," we'd all go, "Yeah, that's fair."
Seriously,
she's allowed to retire.
She's been in 12 years.
Yeah. So I think I do think that Disney, they've said to Lucasfilm, "We want you to make movies, get some movies in theaters," and that's why they prioritized Mando Grogu. They revamped season 4 into a movie, and they're putting it out in theaters so that they can show Disney that they are serious about doing this. And then hopefully just get themselves rolling. I've said before, what Star Wars needs is not to let the great be the enemy of the good, or the perfect be the enemy of the good. And instead of trying to make the perfect movie, just make a good movie. Let it go out there and let it be good. Let it be a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, let it be that, or like 81%, like somewhere in there where it's good, but we're not going to be like, that's the greatest movie of all time, but it'll get audiences back to seats, and it will prove to them that they can do it. Because at this point, it does seem to be almost like a mental block for Lucasfilm, if we talk about them as a person as opposed to a company, where they're like they keep stopping themselves from actually going through with any of these ideas. So I do think that they have been told, you need to do this and it needs to be done well, and we need to get back to what we were doing 2015 to 2019. And so that's the focus, that's priority. That's why there are so many things in the oven. They're cooking so many ideas, and hopefully one will come through. If not, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy may retire anyways in the next couple of years, but I think she'd like to go out on top too. I think she'd like to see through, Mando Grogu and something else that is like another great movie in terms of like how well it does, but also a great movie in terms of its quality and artistic value. So but yeah, I think the heat is on at Lucasfilm. And just for any of my Toronto Maple Leafs fans that might be listening to this, and heard my Kyle Dubas metaphor, I know it's forcing a square peg into a parallelogram hole. I know it didn't work perfectly. I know there's far more complexities to what went down between Dubas and Shanahan, but vaguely from a macro point of view, it kind of, I think it's a similar kind of relationship between Kennedy and Iger. All right. I think that's a good spot. Maybe what? One last one, because this one should be quick. Vlad Sander says, here in America, it's approaching Thanksgiving. It is Thanksgiving as we record this, in which we give thanks for people and things in our lives. What are y'all thankful for in Star Wars fandom, in the Star Wars fandom /universe? Ben, what are you thankful for? I'm gonna throw it to you first again.
I am thankful that we are here doing this show 13 some odd years later after we started, and we're not just talking about so-and-so was confirmed about for Celebration Japan or whatever else, what we used to talk about on the show about 13 years ago. That we actually next week we'll have too much to talk about. We will like, starting with Skeleton Crew, we'll just basically be ignoring the news because the news will keep coming. There'll be stuff happening and we'll just be ignoring it to talk about the new Star Wars TV show, the third Star Wars TV show of the year. That's crazy. That's insane. The fact that Star Wars ends and again, we make the joke, we go online, Star Wars is dead. Those people, like, it's hilarious because we are we say it all the time, but you can't say it enough. You're in a golden age here. We do not know how lucky we have it. So I'm thankful that we have something to talk about because I know we love to complain about it. We love to pick it apart, but I do love me some Star Wars, and I like watching Star Wars, and I got some stuff coming in a few days. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, and on that note, I'm grateful that we have people to talk about Star Wars with, and like that's in one sense that's like very specific to like you and me and everybody that's on this show, and that we specifically talk about Star Wars, but like as I hope this episode has demonstrated, like this show can be a conversation between you and me, in that you, the listener, and us, the hosts, and my entry point into Star Wars fandom was listening to podcasts because all of a sudden there were people talking about Star Wars the way that I wanted to and the way that I enjoyed hearing it talked about, and I'm grateful that people would tune in and listen to this show and be a part of the conversation in that way. So
I distinctly remember reading Star Wars Insider magazine and seeing stuff from fans and seeing stuff from Star Wars Celebration and hearing podcasts people talk about it, and like it didn't even cross my mind that I would ever get to do something like that. I would ever get to be a part of something like that. And now here I get the privilege to do this every single week. It's truly something to be thankful for.
Absolutely. It's hard not to do a Thanksgiving segment without being corny, but there you go. There it is. And with that corniness, we will begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions and answers. Thank you to everybody who is sounding off in the live chat, and thank you to everybody who's listening to this later on your drive to work, your walk to school, wherever, however you listen to it. We thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you'll tune in again next week as we discuss the season 1 premiere. And yes, I'm going to say season 1 because who knows, maybe there's a second season in the books for the show. The season 1 premiere, episodes 1 and 2 of Skeleton Crew. We're going to have a great discussion. We're going to break them all down. We're going to have a lot of fun, get back into our sort of regular routine of talking about these Star Wars shows and finding all the good, bad, and everything else in between on them. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Just make sure you tune in then. They'll be live Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. That's 6 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, available in your podcast feeds for Friday morning. So that you can listen to us as you get ready for the weekend. Ben, thank you, as always, for being on. Thank you for jumping on in the middle of your vacation.
Yeah, like I said, it was a pleasure to sit here and watch Dom talk to himself because, like I said, I wasn't here.
Ben just faded out for everybody listening, he just faded away. Yeah, there was a minute there I was going to have to do the show by myself, and Ben, who consistently gets left on his own by the rest of us while we go on vacation, was like, nah, I'll jump in for my vacation.
Like I said, I know how it is. I know how it feels. So I wanted to be the co-host that I need. I wanted to be.
All right. Again, we'll remind you to make sure you're subscribed to the Star Wars Underworld on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. That way you will never miss an episode. And if you want to support us, you can also become a channel member on YouTube. You don't really get anything, but you get like a cool thing next to your name in the chat. And it's kind of like a tip jar. That's kind of what it is. We're like those musicians in the subway, except we're doing a podcast, and this is like throwing some quarters at us. Imagine if instead of busking like with music, we just did a podcast somewhere and set up like a guitar case in front of us and let people throw money in there. Do you think we should try?
Shake a can.
Do you think we should try that at Celebration Japan?
I'm
outside the convention center.
I'm pretty sure we would get kicked out of Japan because they do not put up with that crap in that country. Okay, they have way higher standards than we do.
Oh man. Yeah, subscribe, review the show if you like it, or if you don't, just keep moving. Don't put that negativity out in the world. And join the Discord, join the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord. That's where we open things up for Ask the SWU questions. Every now and again, we throw out a specific topic, but usually it's just whatever you would like to hear us talk about. So join the Discord. There's lots of fun that goes on there. There's movie nights, there's game nights, there's general chit chat. It's a lot of fun, or so I'm told. I got it. Yeah, I was in there. And follow us on social media. We're at the SWU pretty much everywhere, including our new Facebook page. Yay.
New Facebook page. It's there for the time being. Who knows? I just received word that the Facebook algorithm has decided just to start deleting pages again. So hopefully it'll stay there. Who knows?
What fun. But we're also on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, as we always tell you. We're on Blue Sky?
We are on Blue Sky.
We
got 2,000 followers over there on Blue Sky. We are up. We are up in the world.
Moving on up. I love it. To the big blue sky.
That's how the song goes. I think so.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And of course, check out all the shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, including the Raeside, Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, the Tractor Beam, and more. And as I mentioned, not necessarily part of the network, but if you enjoy hockey talk and specifically Toronto Maple Leafs talk, tune in to Game Over Toronto live after every Toronto Maple Leafs game. All right, that's it. We'll be back next week to talk about the premiere of Skeleton Crew. Enjoy the first 2 episodes. We're going to have the best time talking about it. For Ben and everybody at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you. It's a wrap.